Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom and welcome to my workbench. In a previous video, I was working on a Super Nintendo and kind of got stuck when it was functional, but the graphics were just completely borked. I like that word, borked. Um, I didn't have anything to work off of at the time, and I had to go back and do some more research. From the looks of it, either the PPU-1 or the PPU-2 have gone bad, and I didn't have spares of either of them. But now I have a donor board that's already had some pieces harvested off of it for other repairs that I was able to pick up. And we'll try swapping them out one at a time and see what happens. The C64 has this website where you can kind of look at all the things that go wrong in a C64 and be able to identify exactly which chip is wrong. Boom, 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 real quick. I haven't been able to find such a thing for the Super Nintendo, just descriptions on Console 5's wiki that says, if it looks like this, it might be this, or this, or this, or this, and it kind of goes through. But for everything I was reading about this particular console, it looks like it's probably PPU-2 or PPU-1, and we'll just harvest them off this board and change them off one at a time and see what happens. So let's take a look at this. This is our donor board. It's obviously a different generation. This is an SHVC-01. The new one is not an SHVC. Actually, throwing pieces around. We are moving to transplanting into a CPU-RGB-01. Obviously they're different boards, but my understanding is the chips are, for the most part, the same. Boards are different sizes. Not really that concerned about it. Obviously the sound processor, the DSP chips, have been harvested off of this one already, so this is not a useful board anymore. This is the one that I recapped in the last video, which we should be all set to use. As like I said, my understanding is the PPU chips are interchangeable, and off of our current board we have a PPU-2C and a PPU-1 no revision. This is a PPU-2B and a PPU-1 no revision. And 5C7701, 5C7701, 2 July 7, 4 EVG7, okay. Different manufacturer codes. 5703, 57C803. So other than the revision B, revision C, basically the same chip. So I prefer not to downgrade PPU-2 to start with, so we'll start with PPU-1. I'm gonna be completely honest, I've never desoldered SMD chips like this before, so hopefully I don't destroy everything in the process. Now remember, I've said this time and time again, and yet it bears repeating. I am not an expert in this, not by any stretch of the imagination. But it's sometimes fun to watch people fail too, right? We're going to start by just putting an absolute ton of flux on the outside edge of this chip. And I'm going to start with the solder wick and just suck up as much solder as I can. I know it's not going to be enough to completely free the chip, but it should take enough up that when we go to the hot air gun, it should come off pretty easily. And if I was smart, I probably wouldn't have started with the donor board with a skill that I am not entirely proficient in, but hey, you know, live and learn. So my hot air gun that I'm using actually isn't meant to do soldering work. It's actually a little bit lower temperature. It's really mostly just for melting shrink wrap. And so this is going to take a while, and I'm just going to save you the hassle of watching me just struggle for a while. But between having the corner of the chip under my tweezers and using the gun for long enough, it will eventually come up. Probably not the greatest technique, and I definitely developed a bad habit very quickly with pulling on the pins for the chip. That totally won't come to haunt me in the future. And here I am doing the same thing to the PPU-1 on the RGB-01 board, which happens to be my favorite of all of the revisions of the Super Nintendo main boards. And as you can see, it's the same process. I just put flux on, take some solder wick to it, heat it up, pry it off the board. Or if I was smart, maybe not rip up the chip by its pins. If I had only mangled this one pin, I could probably work around it pretty easily. But the 7 that I mangled up here is going to take a lot more work to fix, and I don't have the patience or the skills to do that right now.
4 to 6 weeks later.
This is clearly not the same Super Nintendo. In fact, this is SNES number 3 for this project. It is actually a functioning Super Nintendo, but the bottom case is cracked in several places and is functionally garbage. It's also the first one I've come across that still has the security screws in it, so I actually had to go buy a set of Nintendo security screwdrivers to get into this thing, which was, albeit annoying, but necessary. Flipping this over, I get my first look at the inside and see that it is another HSVC model. But no matter how careful I was, this plastic was so brittle that even just unscrewing from it, it started to crack and break all over the place. Just to be proactive, since these caps are at least 30 years old at this point, I've decided to recap this one as well and remove the RF modulator. And hopefully that will also clean up the picture, because although it's functional, it's not the cleanest picture I've seen. Since I only had one bottom piece that wasn't falling apart, and 2 top pieces that were both in fairly decent condition, I just picked the better of the 2 top pieces and went up to the sink and started cleaning. And I'll take these outside to go Retrobright. So it's been really warm and really sunny here all week, right? Until today, the day I have set aside to do some Retrobrighting, where it's about 60 degrees, and I'm wearing a sweatshirt, and kind of cloudy, which is really annoying. But my solar panels are getting enough light to make enough energy, so I'm going to assume there's enough UV light out here to still do this today. Plus, it's noon and I've got about 6 hours of sunlight, so hopefully this will be good enough. Alright, it's about 3:30, and as you can see, I have my sunglasses on because it has gotten very bright and sunny out here. And the Retrobrighting has been going on for a little over 4 hours now. I'm gonna go take a look. That's actually quite warm. looks a lot better, but not quite there yet. That looks a lot better. Again, not quite there yet. I'm just going from the inside to the outside. It does look a whole lot better, but it's still... They started very different, so they're still not the same. Very close. I didn't really think there was anything wrong until I got to this point. I'm trying to put the main board, which is an HSV-C01 board, into the case that isn't destroyed, which is the case for the RGB-01 main board. And you'd think they're the same, right? But no, they're not. The posts that the HSVC module need to screw into are taller on the RGB-01 board because they just make contact with the top. So there may be a slight amount of off-camera modification to get this right. Before I put the top on and put everything back together, let's make sure it works. You know, I think Hal's Hole-in-One Golf doesn't get nearly enough credit for what it is. It gives a gameplay experience on par with Link's 386, at least the early versions of it, at a time when nobody had a 386 in their house to play it on. I just want to point that out. I love this game. My very respectable 104 for my first game back. I think that's okay. I think, all things considered, this being my first Super Nintendo restoration, and I had 2 broken and 1 working Super Nintendo to start with, having 1 working in a nice case, fully retrobrighted, fully recapped, ready to go Super Nintendo that I can have as a daily driver hooked up to my TV just makes me very happy, and I'm gonna call it an accomplishment that it came out like this. I'm pretty proud of it, and I hope you enjoyed the journey. But is the journey over?